Hi everyone. Today we're going to be making Persian saffron rice, better known as chelo. And this is made with basmati rice. It is delicious and you can feed the whole family very cheaply. This is traditionally served with Persian stews or kebab. So keep watching if you'd like to learn how to make chelo. So to make our basmati rice, let's see what we're going to need. We're going to need some olive oil, 1 tablespoon of salt, a strainer that is tall and has very small holes in it, a tea cloth or a roll of paper towels, a spatula that is very flat, a large bowl with 4 cups of dried basmati rice. So it needs to be basmati. Any other kind of rice is not going to work with this recipe. And I get the kind that's the Indian variety. And a large, heavy pot with a lid. All right, let's get started. Now the first step is we have to wash the basmati rice. And it's really important that we thoroughly wash it because the rice, when you get it from the store, is going to have dust in there and lots of extra starch. So it's vital to wash it at least a minimum of 10 times, and I'm going to show you how you do that. Notice that the bowl I'm using for the rice is much larger than the amount of rice I have. That's very important because we want a lot of water to be above the rice so that all the starch and dust float to the top. Now notice here I am taking my hands and just very gently swirling through the rice. You don't want to be rough because you don't want to break those rice grains. So I'm going to do this a few times. This is the first wash. We're going to have a minimum of 10 washes. And you can see how cloudy that water is. Very carefully pour it out. You can see some debris going out of there. Just want to try to drain all that out without getting the rice in the sink. Second wash. So we're going to keep doing this process for a minimum of 10 times or until that water is basically clear. So now you can see by the time I got to the 10th wash how much clearer that water is. That's where you want to be, and that rice is now clean and ready to be cooked. So now that we have clean rice, we need to add salt to it. Now, I'm going to add a tablespoon of salt, which I measured this, but basically I just measure it into my hand. It's about a palm size. I'm just going to pour it right over the rice and just set it aside because we have to get the water boiling. Now, the ideal way to cook the rice, if you have the time, is to soak this rice for 2 hours or even several hours before you actually cook it. I never have that time, so I'm just going to go straight on. It'll still taste great. So now what we need to do is boil water in our heavy pot. So I'm going to fill this with water, just tap water to about right there. And we're going to get that water boiling. So you can see I filled this about 3/4 of the way full with water. The other thing I'm going to do is add some salt to the water just to flavor the water and get it boiling. Okay, so I have my water boiling here. I added just a dash of salt to be able to just boil it and flavor the water a little bit. I'm just going to cover it until it comes to a rapid boil, and then we're going to be adding our basmati rice, and I'll explain to you what we do at that point. Okay, we have our water coming to a rapid boil. We're now going to put the rice into the water, and we're going to do a technique called parboiling, where we're going to boil it until it all floats to the top, and then we're going to be draining it, rinsing it, and then steaming it. Okay, so it needs to get back to a rapid boil, and we're just going to let it boil until it all comes to the top. It'll probably take about 10 minutes. Okay, this is almost parboiled, so you can see the rice is starting to rise. One way to test if it's ready, you can take a kernel or two, just don't burn yourself, and give it a little bite and see if it's a little bit soft, but not too much. Kind of al dente. I'm gonna give it about 30 more seconds and I think it'll be ready to strain. Okay, this is ready to be strained. So notice how the kernels have gotten a lot longer. They're not cooked yet, they are parboiled. So we have to still do another step. All right, let's strain this. Okay, so I'm gonna strain this very carefully into a strainer. Okay. And very quickly, I want to spray this with some cold water. Not too much, but enough to stop the cooking. All right, let's get back to the next step. Okay, now that we have our rice parboiled and strained, we are ready to do the last step, which is the steaming of the rice. That's going to be what makes it so good. If you just add the rice straight to the pot, it's going to stick. So we are going to make an olive oil coating at the bottom. This actually is considered to be a separate thing called tahdig in Persian culture. So we're just going to put about 1/4 to 1/2 inch thick of olive oil at the bottom. And I know that sounds like a lot, but it's going to make a really wonderful rice crust when it's all done. And that can be eaten almost like an appetizer. Okay, now you don't want to just dump the rice in because you won't have the space for the steam to get out. So we're basically going to kind of gently guide it with our spatula just over the oil. And when you get at the end, you kind of want to go spatula by spatula. And that just really lets that steam start getting out. Okay, and then here's the magic part. So we're going to now mound the rice into a pyramid shape. And that's going to help with that steaming process. And once you have it kind of made into a nice little pyramid, now you're going to take the end of your spatula right into the center, and we're going to make a nice hole in the middle because we're going to be pouring some water in here, which is going to help with the steaming. Okay, so hopefully you can see that in the video. And off to the stove we go. So now I'm going to add some water into the hole and then around the rice. Not too much, just, you don't want to put too much. Just enough so that it can steam out. Just about like that. And now, before I just put the top on, I'm going to wrap it in either a tea cloth or 2 layers of paper towel. So here's a nice tea cloth. I'm just going to wrap the lid with this, and this is going to help that steam to stay in. And then you want to get a nice tight fit over it and just make sure the cloth isn't hanging down where it'll get burned. And now I'm going to start with this up at pretty high, probably on my scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to put it at a 7, and I'm going to let it sit there until the steam starts coming up, and probably about 5 minutes, and that's going to cook that crust at the bottom. Again, it's called tahdig. It's going to cook that crust, and then we're going to lower the temperature for the actual steaming for about another 45 minutes. Okay, it's been about 5 minutes. Just a quick peek. Don't take the whole lid off because you don't want to let that steam off, but a quick peek will let you hear that it's sizzling, it's ready to go. So now I'm going to go ahead and drop this down to low, to about 2 or 3 out of 10. And just let it go for about 45 minutes and then we'll be done. Now this step is completely optional, but if you want to be very authentic, especially if you're going to be serving this cello, this rice to guests, we're going to make some saffron water. Normally you would use Persian saffron. I'm going to be using Spanish saffron today, and this one still has a very good smell. So what we're going to do is take some of these saffron threads. These are really the stamens of the saffron flower. And we need to grind them up in a spice grinder. So I have a spice grinder here. This is what you would use to grind coffee, for example. And I'm going to put a few of these stamens in here, maybe about a teaspoon's worth in there, along with a pinch of sugar. And the granules of the sugar are going to help this to grind up without getting moist, especially if you're in a humid environment. And I'm going to grind it into a powder. So it's not going to look like much right now. Okay, I have some black tea I've made here. It's hot, so it's important that it's hot. And I'm just going to take a little plate, pour some of that tea into the plate. Not too much, because the more you put in, the more dilute the saffron's going to be. And I'm just going to pour this saffron into that tea. And give it a little stir and let it kind of steep in there for a little bit. And you can see it has that nice, pretty saffron color that when we're going to put about 2 spatulas full of rice in here when it's all done and mix it around, and that's going to look beautiful on top of our rice. Okay, so I have just 2 small spatulas full of rice here and my saffron water. I'm just going to put that rice right into the saffron water and give it a little stir with a spoon just to coat it all in the water. It smells wonderful. All right, and that's what it's going to look like, and you'll see the magic at the end when we have the final rice all put into a pyramid on a platter. So our rice has steamed for 45 minutes. Now we can take off the top. You see all the steam rising, and this looks really good. It's not too mushy, not too firm. It's right in between. And now when you get it onto the platter, you're going to want to take spatula by spatula again so that you don't get it sticky. And then I'm going to show you what we're going to do with the saffron, and we'll be done. So you're just going to mound it into a pyramid. Spatula by spatula. So just pour it right on the top so it becomes a pyramid. Now my crust looks a little underdone. It's not quite brown yet, so I'm going to put it back on the stove while we do the saffron part. We're going to let that crisp up. But other than that, so I'm just going to grab all the loose rice that I can find, leaving just enough on the bottom for the crust. I'm going to go ahead and set that on high on the oven. And while that's frying, so I'm just going to mound this into a nice pyramid. Pour a little bit of extra saffron water over it just for some color. And then finally, we have the rice that we have here. I'm going to just kind of pour that. You can pour it whatever design you want. I'm just going to put mine kind of in a line over it. Look how amazing that is looking. And if you want to get extra fancy, some people actually put an egg, crack an egg on it, and others will put a nice pat of butter on there. But I think I'm just going to leave mine like that right now. And once the tahdig, the crust is done, we're going to put some of that around, and it will be ready to serve.